agree more. I think that does add a really cool element to it. As I've already mentioned, and Nightcrawler was the one that brought it up really, that I saw in the comments that several of you ran with, is that Melee is the competitive game. Melee is the game for those of you that are sticklers for controls, that are absolutely, wanting to be the tightest and the most responsive and the kind of tournament-ready game out of the series, without any of the kind of indie stuff that's spun off of it, the homebrew stuff. It is the most competitive kind of game in the series, and that's why Melee is Nightcrawler's favorite. And I think that's a great observation. It absolutely is. Backed up by Man with a Harmonica, talking about Brawl being more forgiving and kind of for a larger audience, versus Melee, which is more competitive and is more a game for those of us that wanted to master the art of Smash Brothers, right? It's one of the reasons I never got that tremendously into Melee, because that's not why I play. I play for fun, It's not about getting that super competitive edge, beating everybody that you know in a certain way. That just doesn't do it for me. But the idea that Brawl is a much more broad audience, made for a broad audience, and it is more forgiving, it's easier to jump into. With so many characters, there are some of the characters that are easier to control and you can still win with, versus some of the other games, which there were definitely harder folks to control. Mario's always kind of the middle ground, right? He has been in every game he's ever been in. But you go into something like Roy, which is a little bit harder to control in terms of using them effectively. Any of those games, I think, or any of those characters, as you start moving on to the more complicated ones, that's when you can really become a Zen master at that particular specification. But if the whole game was like that, nobody would play it. It wouldn't match a broad audience. So the idea that it really appeals to a broad audience, I think, is important. And Sonic Rose brought up the idea of the online elements of Brawl made it the best, because it really was the first time that you could actually spend time with a community of folks, right? Where there is a full-blown, full-on, community out there where you can fight, you can actually join matches, things like that, rather than just where the old Smash Brothers had been, where it was really a kind of party game for wherever you were, right? You invited a bunch of people up, you ordered some pizzas, and you just, played Smash Brothers all day, right? That's cool, but it only takes you so far. The idea of the online elements being in Brawl made Brawl Sonic Rose's favorite. And I think that's cool. So yeah, there you have it. Those are the contributions I wanted to really highlight from the community. And I think they are all legit. I think you've all made good cases. Let me try to run back through those cases again. And I think I've already done that, right? So the idea that the 64 version, Super Smash Brothers, is really nostalgia-based. It's not about the control. It's kind of more about celebrating the Nintendo 64 moment. And that is an awesome moment. Brawl, let's go to Melee. Melee is much tighter. Melee fixes all the issues. Melee, for my money, is the best game that they ever made for GameCube. It's the best game for that system. And whenever you have the marquee game for a particular system, it's got to be great. And as we said, the competitive edge. The music was spectacular in that game. Really, so many things lined up that I thought were just done so well in the GameCube version. And Brawl really took Melee and expanded it to a larger audience. More characters, more stuff, better graphics, even better music, as hard as that is to imagine. And the layer of customization was just spectacular on Brawl. Those are the reasons I think you would choose the ones you chose. Now let me get into my selection real quick. I'd say I enjoyed and played all of these games a tremendous amount. I mean, I love Super Smash Brothers for 64. We were one of those crews, we went and rented it. We played it for a little while, very skeptical about whether this game would be any good at all, and immediately knew we had to go buy it because it was just so damn good. And it really took over at the very end of my high school career when we were starting to wane on the idea of playing a lot of GoldenEye and playing a lot of Mario Kart 64 because we had played those games so much. It was time to move on, and Smash Brothers was a perfect segue into that kind of next game that took up all of our time. So that was great. That was awesome. Melee, played a ton of that. That was more of a game I played in college. It was a lot of fun, and it was the one I probably played the least, but I really, really enjoy it. It's just a fun game to play, top to bottom, and very tight as an experience. It's airtight. It's just great. And then Brawl, you know, is that kind of popular choice. It's fun. It fixes all the issues, I think, of the older games, and it still retains that forgiving nature. And that's why I would say, if I'm going to talk about the best game, I'm going to say Brawl. And I think there's a really good reason behind it. I think it's the Nintendo staying on top of their game in terms of pushing the developers. Because Brawl was actually developed by several different developers. Melee and Super Smash Brothers were developed by HAL. You know, the idea, Nintendo is really focusing those efforts and saying, these things are great. We're going to put these things in it. Go make that vision happen in a bigger game. And every single time they've delivered, and I think that's fantastic. So, you know, the mark of a good series is that every successive game gets better as you move forward. Super Smash Brothers was a great game with a solid concept. It's one of my favorites of all time. But if you give me the chance to play Smash Brothers or Brawl, I'm going to play Brawl every time. So, you know, going down the line, Melee just is like the perfection of form of what the original Smash Brothers intended to be. And then you have the more popular choice, the broader audience, that Brawl is over Melee, which, you know, I think is a little bit more niche. So I'm going to pick Brawl. It's just top to bottom, it's probably the best experience. The single player experience, I'd say, is the strongest in the first game, is the strongest in Super Smash Brothers. But that's neither here nor there. We all know it's a multiplayer game. It's supposed to be fun with people, which is one of the reasons why I really love Brawl. It's just probably the best game, for my money, in terms of a community, having fun with a group of people. So, I think we pretty much covered Smash Brothers, didn't we, guys? I mean, lots to talk about there. I think you could... The reason why it's a good question is because you can make a legitimate claim for every single one of those games. If you couldn't, then why are we even asking the question, right? I'm just really glad to see that people at least chose... Some of you chose each one of the games for different particular reasons, and I think that's fantastic. I'll also say this, you know, I thought that the 64 version, you know, you didn't know until you started playing Melee, and really when you started playing Brawl, how much the music can really affect how good a game is. Because the music in Super Smash Brothers wasn't bad, it was very good, it was reminiscent, but it still to me looked like an older generation game. It was one of the reasons why the 64, in my mind, got the bad rap that it did, of being just a kind of continuation in 3D of what the Super Nintendo did, rather than really taking the step forward in evolution. The way that the PlayStation felt. It felt like it was a grown-up machine. It was a machine that played, you know, digital audio, and it was, you know, it was all about, you know, real recordings and full-blown orchestras and, you know, artists and all these kinds of things. And I think if you look back, you will see that there is a clear break with Melee and Brawl from the original in terms of music. And I think that's an interesting subpoint, because the music becomes so serious and becomes so awesome later in those games that it's just, it's like, this is what it's all about right here. So anyway, yeah, we've covered Smash Brothers. I think you guys understand there's a lot to talk about. We could continue on forever about it, but we would never get a question on for next week, which would completely defeat the purpose of our weekly Ringer. So I want to ask you guys a question for next week. So as you all, I think, have to know at this point, and if you don't, then I feel almost ashamed. The Avengers has come out, and it has also smashed all the records for the largest opening weekend domestically that has ever happened in the United States. Taken away, I think, from Harry Potter, one of the Harry Potter movies, Deathly Hallows, I think. Anyway, it's a smash hit. Smash hit. Well overperformed forecast for it, and is definitely making a ton of money and will certainly be one of the biggest films of the year. There are a ton of superheroes in this thing, and you know what? I've heard many people talk about it. You know, I thought this movie was going to suck because of the idea that there were so many superheroes, and it didn't. Maybe one of the reasons why, you know, it works the way that it does is because people have such low expectations, thinking that there's so many superheroes in this movie. Anyway, I started to think about it. You know, we're past the age, we're about 10 years on from the age of where the superhero movie gets reborn, right? With the Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, and you know, Hulk and Thor and blah blah blah. You just go down the line, right? There's all the X-Men movies, right? And you land in a place where we're actually seeing a lot of superhero movies coming out this year. Avengers being one of them. The Amazing Spider-Man, The Dark Knight has a new entrant in the series that's coming out very soon. So, you know, we've had about 10 solid years of superhero movies. We've had a constant appetite that's been fed with superhero movies. And so that got me thinking about the Weekly Wringer for next week, which is going to go a little something like this. Are you guys tired of superhero movies? Yes, no, why, right? I mean, what, you know, are you okay with there being a lot more superhero movies? Are you kind of tired of it? Not saying the Avengers is good, bad, and different, not saying the Dark Knight's going to be bad, but are you a little bit sick of the idea that they're just kind of churning out superhero movies rather than maybe moving into something else? And that this movement seems to be defiant, because everybody thought the superhero movie was dead right around when Watchmen came out. And now, you know, it's just continuing on, and people seem to be making a ton of money with it. So I want to know what you guys think. Are you tired of seeing superhero movies? Or are superhero movies kind of this thing where they can always do it and it will always work for one reason or another? Has superhero movies changed? Maybe they've changed. Could be a good thing to consider before you start posting some comments. In any case, that is the question for next week on the Weekly Wringer. Thank you guys for watching. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. I am the Commodore from the Clan of the Grey Wolf, and there is no reset button.